right, class. Today I am hoping to talk to you about how to read a book. All right, maybe it's a little bit more than that, but stay with me, okay? Uh, when you are engaging in college classes, such as at Fruitland, you no doubt will be assigned a lot of reading material. And so it's my hope that I can help you with some good practices to adopt that will hopefully uh, be able to put you in a better position to where you can help balance your time and get the most out of your reading, not only while you're in school, but after you graduate, as you go on into life. We get so much from reading that I want to make sure that you have some good practices, and especially as it pertains to research, to be able to retain that information. What good does it do to have all these great books at your disposal, at your fingertips, and we read them only to just forget the information, right? So, what I'm hoping is that as we walk through this, we can develop some good habits and some thoughts. Maybe it's a different way of thinking about this for you. Now, I don't know any of you personally yet, but one of the things that I struggled with, was I'm a slow reader, right? I don't read fast, and I really wrestled with all of the assignments, and especially when it came to the language. In fact, I remember reading one of my systematic theology books, and I would have to read every paragraph two or three times just to grasp what was going on. I'm hoping to help you with some hints, some tactics, some helps that will help you read the book better. I've got this PowerPoint up. It's also on the Populi page as well, so you can look at this after this video if you so choose. It's called Principles of Reading, and this came from Westminster Theological Seminary. I felt like it was a good source, and there's no real reason to reinvent the wheel as they walk through it. Another good source for this is Albert Mohler's book, Conviction to Lead. And in that, he kind of talks through a lot of the same things that I'm going to show you here. First thing I would just bring to your attention is that reading a book and any kind of written communication is different from face-to-face conversation. Now, I grew up in the 80s and 90s before all of the technology. I don't know where you fall in line of generation, but for me, face-to-face conversation is my preference. In fact, I would rather talk to you face-to-face than on the telephone, and certainly rather than through a video screen. But that's the day we are in, I suppose, the day of technology. But I just want to get you to think through some of the differences between communication in person and even one way on a video, but communication in person and communication via text. If you are savvy to the texting, I know that my daughter probably sends 100 times more texts than I do in a day. But if you're savvy to texting, one of the things you'll recognize is that you can put emojis and all these things in there to help relay your attitude. But ultimately, the reader has the great challenge of interpreting what you mean, and they can read into that whatever tone or attitude they may have as well. So when we're looking at a book, what we want to do is understand authorial intent. And what that means is we want to try to grasp from the author what they intend to relay. And so that means words are really important. We don't have the visual signs or the nonverbal signs that we're used to, things such as smiles or frowns or crossing of the arms, those things that let you know attitude. You often, reading a book, don't get those kind of things. You don't get tone of voice. You don't have inflection. And so when you read, you tend to put that tone in your head. And oftentimes, that can be a mistake in terms of interpretation. So we just want to understand the intentionality that we must take not only in our writing of papers, but as we read. You see, you're going to be challenged throughout your college career to write in clear, concise terminology. You want to make sure that what you're relaying is able to be interpreted in a way that you intend it to be. So we want to make sure that we take and stress the importance of how we use words in our writing and in also how others use words as we read. Again, we are trying to perceive what the author intends in that tone. So here's a couple things that we need to make sure we're aware of. The choice of words. As you think about what is being used, you want to make sure that you are taking note of what words they choose to use, what words they could have used. The structure. How does the author think? What amount of sections, the length of section are they given to a certain idea or a certain proposal or reason? How are they treating this in terms of space and words? And you can see some of this in their descriptions. And so you want to pay attention. They can show their biases through their choice of words. They can show what they are leading you toward in their structure. And so you just want to be aware of these things. We are absolutely in the age of information. There is more available to you than has ever been available, right? So one of the things that you have to determine is how do you balance your time, right? So listen, you're going to be taking classes, and I don't know how many classes you're enrolled in, but if you're enrolled full-time at Fruitland, you have 8 different classes each quarter. And in 8 different classes, you have a number of textbooks. And so what you need to be able to do is look at these books and discern how much for your reading. How much time do you need to get this article done or read these sections? And can you reflect upon this, afford to spend time in these areas? So you want to make sure that you're taking these things into account. What's most important? When you're thinking about look, I've got this Weimeister and Robertson book, Quality Research Papers. You're going to skim through here, see that each chapter addresses something different. And so when you look at this is for, you might be able to skim through parts of this, but other parts you're going to need to lean into a little bit more. The same thing's true for Turabian's Writer's Guide. You're going to look at this and say, man, I'm going to have to spend more time in certain sections. What's important? How do I understand this subject? If I don't read this fully, will my comprehension be lacking in that area, right? So you really want to look at this in a way that you're trying to balance out your reading. So look at this. Every book you're going to want to make sure and kind of skim and kind of see where the areas of importance are. I know this may come as a surprise, but there's a lot of books out there that have a little bit more fluff than they need. In fact, I remember reviewing a book just a few months ago, and one of my observations was that this book was about 50 or 60 pages longer than it needed to be. But that's what sells books, I guess. At any rate, we want to make sure we're asking these questions. Now, understand that we're not just simply reading words, right? We are trying to engage with the author into a conversation. So basically, we have to understand communication is not just simply giving information, but also receiving information. So what we need to do is make sure we understand what the author is trying to get at. We want to investigate what they're trying to say and why they're trying to say it. And this requires what is called pre-reading. Now, listen, I know that you might be thinking, look, I've got so much to do that I don't have time to pre-read. Let me just tell you, a little bit of pre-reading can save you a lot of time in the future. So I want to just kind of go over a few of these things. First off, what you want to do is you want to really look over the cover of the book. And when you look at a cover of a book, it's got some helpful things on the front and back. Now, I know, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Well, listen, you need to judge a book by its cover to some degree. What we're seeing here in this book is a few things. Take your Weimeister book out and just see that, okay, this is a book that is written about research papers. It's the 4th edition. That means there's been some edits along the way. It's for students of religion and theology. That means it's very focused. It's going to be good for us as we consider the writing in this time. On the back side, we see here's some of the things that has been put in this updated version, such as a step-by-step instruction on how to go about writing a good research paper. And we see also a little bit about the authors. Okay, so we see that Nancy Weimeister has a Doctor of Education from Andrews University and is a professor at Andrews University. 50 years experience teaching, and so we look at that. She's written several books in English and Spanish, and a Greek grammar book for Spanish-speaking students. Okay, so we see that and we say that's the credibility of Weimeister. Then down here, Robertson, we see Robertson has a master's from Andrews University, also one from Indiana University, and they're the dean of libraries and seminary librarian at Andrews University. So they probably know a little bit about research and books. And so we look at the cover of the book. We look at the inside and the outside. Look at the table of contents, and you look at the table of contents. You can say, oh, this is meant to be a resource. This is not simply a book that is telling me a story. It's not a novel, but it's a resource. And so you want to look through there. You want to go to the introduction section. And in the introduction section or the preface, you want to kind of see what this book is about. Take some notes. Maybe flip to the end, and you see a conclusion section, and you can get an idea for the purpose of the book. And when you do that, you're going to kind of begin reading every chapter and every section with an understanding of the overall picture. Why is this book written? What's the point? So you want to skim through on these ways. In that PowerPoint, you see an example of pre-reading. I'm not going to go through that at this point. I'll let you read that later on. So what you want to do here is you want to make a good decision about your reading. So after you pre-read, taking time to skim through that and just look at what the book is about, then you want to decide how deep am I going to engage in this. If I look at any book that's a book intended for a resource, I know that I'm going to keep this book on my shelf, and that means that I want to read the ones that are most important, and then there are other ones I might skim. And I might just take a note of what's in there, and I can reference that later on. And so I would know by looking at this book the chapters that I want to spend time in and the chapters that I might just want to skim. You'll notice in your assignments as you look at that book, we're not reading every single chapter, but you ought to skim some of the other ones. All right, so now when you go into to do a deep read, there's some really helpful things that you need to do. First off, make sure you're in a good location. You don't want to be in a place that's got poor lighting. You don't want to be in a place that's got distractions. You honestly don't want to be in a place where you are tempted to get up and wander about. Okay, I have those temptations all the time, so I have to have a place to read. The second thing is you need to have a tool, and that tool is a pen or pencil. Now, let me just make one caveat. If you've borrowed somebody's book, maybe don't use a pen or a pencil or highlighter. But every book that I read, including my Bible, is written. I have markings in the margin. I have things highlighted. I have keywords identified. Sometimes I ask questions of the work. Sometimes I'll write, hey, here's the thesis of the book. I'm asking questions that go along with the book, and this helps me later on as I go back through to recognize that, hey, I was having a conversation with this author, and I was making some identifying marks along the way. And then as I'm a critical review also helps me in research, because I might find a good definition or a good statistic or something that really speaks to the heart of what I'm trying to research. I've noted that in the book as well. And so certainly there's also room for index cards and other methodologies for research note. Doing it in the book is a helpful thing because we know where it's at within the context. All right. Secondly, we want to make sure we recognize how this reading it relates. So once we're done, once we evaluate this work in context with other works. So you should see in any kind of book that lays out information, hard data, you should see references, citations. What I want to do is note, uh, did they talk about the other sources? Did they uh, acknowledge other viewpoints? Did they look at how historically this topic was addressed, or how this text approached this certain area of the society, whether it be church or whatnot? You got to really kind of decide for your perspective what kind of value is in this reading. So, in other words, who's this written to? You might end the book and say, "Gosh, this book is really good for pastors, or it's really good for students, or it might be really good for a stay-at-home mom." Whatever it is, you need to recognize who's it written for, who's it most beneficial for, and then what kind of effect should this text have? Does it challenge you in some sort of way? Does it speak to a certain perspective that you have on life? I read a book recently on our spiritual enablement by the Holy Spirit to lead, to enact. And as you read those things, basically, I found myself at the end saying, "Well, how does this speak to my life?" And it spoke to me the necessity of a regular, humble approach to this life. That I need the Holy Spirit working in me, because apart from Christ, I can do nothing. And so that was the part that I gleaned most important in that book. And so, anyway, you just want to be able to look back and reflect and say, well, how do I put this into my life? Now, after you do this, what you want to do is you want to kind of make some notes. What's going to help you retain this information after you put the book down? And you realize these are valuable things, maybe on a sticky note, maybe on a piece of paper you fold up and put inside the cover of it. You make some notes that say, hey, here's why this book speaks to my topic. And we'll talk about topic of research later on, but here's what this book speaks to. That way, when you go back to it, you have an idea of what's in there, right? And so it kind of forces you to organize your thoughts, and just kind of draw out a line of, why did you have this? Why is this in your library? Why are you maintaining this book? Now, a couple things that I just want to point out. Sometimes you're going to get overwhelmed. Maybe you're already there. Maybe you're already looking at the classwork, the number of books you have to read, the papers you have to write, and you're saying, the reason I'm doing this online, or the reason I'm doing this class is I have to balance my family life, my church life, my work life, and listen, I have so much to do and I'm overwhelmed. I recognize that. Every professor at Fruitland recognizes that life is more than just the class you're taking. And so what you need to do is you need to take a step back and realize, here's how I need to approach this work. Friends, as you do this, and you decide what you need to put in, listen, I don't want you to lose your love for reading. Or if you don't have that love, I'm hoping to help you develop a love for reading. So I want you to make sure that you are taking time and resting, taking time, sacrificing in the right areas. Sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice the quality of your reading in order to be able to offset the other obligations you have. It's not to say that I don't ask you to sacrifice. Every professor here will ask you to give your best that you can give toward your class, but you need to recognize that we don't expect this to be the number one priority of your life. If you're a mom or a dad, husband, wife, we know you have responsibilities that go ahead of education. We believe education is important, but I want you just to look at it and understand that there's a humility here. We have limitations. God has made us all limited creatures. We are made from dust. We have a need for sleep. We have a need for resting our minds. In fact, here's what I'd tell you. When you feel like you have so much to do that you don't have time to rest, trust that God desires for you to rest. Trust that He'll give you the focus you need so that when you come back from that rest, you can focus in on your work the way you need to. Oftentimes, we tend to rely on ourselves and not God to lead us through these things. So I just want to encourage you,